One of the earliest civilizations to prosper in the Indian subcontinent was located along the shores of the Bay of Bengal. It was the land of Kalinga, Odisha as we know it today. The Kalinga Empire spread far beyond the shores to the islands of Bali, Java and Sumatra, now in Indonesia. The poet Kalidas refers to the king of Kalinga as Mahodadhipati, the lord of the seas. The Mahabharata describes the lord of Kalinga as a great warrior king. Ancient Kalinga had trading and cultural links with Bali, Java, Sumatra and Sri Lanka. Around Kartik Purnima, the coastal winds of Odisha blow towards the islands of Bali, Java and Sumatra. The traders of ancient Kalinga favored the auspicious day to begin their journey. It is still celebrated as Boito Bandhano or Charo Khai Purnima to inspire children with the sense of adventure of their ancestors and to pray for the well-being of the sailors out at sea. The glory of Kalinga's past heroes can still be seen in its heritage. The glory of its present is to be seen in one of its greatest sons, Biju Patnaik, often compared to the legendary heroes celebrated by Kalidas or in the Mahabharata. Biju Patnaik had become a legend in his lifetime, an inspiration to many in Odisha and outside. He was one of the daring figures of our times, the builder of a modern resurgent Odisha. He believed that political life was necessarily dedicated to the good of mankind. He always advocated individual initiative and enterprise.
He was like an eagle in the storm and a man who knows how to build people from earth.
One morning my grandfather asked me to accompany him on his way to work. It was very early in the morning and there were no cars or drivers at home. But this of course didn't stop my grandfather, who proceeded to go outside the gates of the house and stop the first cycle rickshaw he could find. We got onto the cycle rickshaw and ended up stopping at a roadside dhaba where he proceeded to order masses of food. Not surprisingly, a crowd gathered around us, and there was grandfather eating away and chatting away with everyone. Comparing this to the kind of security that most people travel with today, or as for that matter of fact, those days, it showed me a side of my grandfather that was truly amazing and maybe even unique.
He was born Vijayananda Patnaik in his ancestral home, Anand Bhavan, in Cuttack, on the 5th of March, 1916. His mother, Ashalata Devi, was a Bengali Brahmo Samaji from Chittagong. His father, Lakshmi Narayan Patnaik, was a sub-judge and once the Diwan of the princely state of Paralakhemudi. He was also a Brahmo Samaji and a pioneering leader of the movement for separate statehood for Odisha, then part of the Bengal presidency. Vijayananda pursued his studies in the mission school at Cuttack and later at Ravenshaw Collegiate School and College. A keen sportsman, his excellence in cricket and football earned him the honor of the college champion in the year 1933 and 34. College student Vijayananda set out on a successful cycling expedition from Cuttack to Peshawar and back. Vijayananda joined the team of students led by the legendary leader Utkalamani Gopabandhu Das to bring relief to the victims of severe floods at Pattamundai in the Kendrapara district. When the leader's umbrella accidentally fell from the boat, the dauntless Vijayananda dived into the turbulent waters of the river Brahmani to retrieve it. When the first aeroplane landed in the Kadiyaboda grounds in Cuttack, young Vijayananda was fascinated by the flying machine. He could not repress his desire to touch and feel it. Scolded and rebuffed by the guards, his desire to fly captured his imagination. His younger son, Naveen Patnaik, reminisces.
He was a great pilot during the Second World War. And after that, of course, he was very much in the independence struggle, arrested by the British. And I'm talking about the diversity of his life. He became a major industrialist. After that, he went into politics. He entered public life, did a great many services to the nation. Earlier, he'd been involved also in the Indonesian independence struggle. He was amongst the first to think of an international prize for the popularization of science called the Kalinga Prize. So, as you said, he had so many different persons in so many different professions who he was related to, because he himself, in his own life, had lived so many lives.
By the age of 23, Vijayanand, a full-fledged pilot, joined the Royal Air Force. He married Gyan Devi of Punjab at Rawalpindi at the same time. The Second World War broke out in the same year. Biju Patnaik flew difficult missions to China, Egypt, and Stalingrad. He rescued British families from war-torn Rangoon. In the Quit India movement of 1942, Vijayanand's patriotism brought him close to the revolutionaries. His friend George Fernandez remembers his activities.
He was the man who was in charge of the Royal Air Force for South Asia. And in that capacity, he had a lot of influence in many places. But he chose to be a part of the Quit India movement. And some of the more outstanding leaders of that movement, like Jayaprakash Narayan, Dr. Lohia, Aruna Azaf Ali, were allowed by him to stay in his house at the height of the Quit India movement. He flew them wherever they had to go from one place to another. He flew them in the Royal Air Force planes. And he risked his life for that. Because at the time came when he was finally, it was discovered. And he would have been sent to the gallows. Fate saved him.
The charisma of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose touched him deeply. Inspired by his call, Vijayanand airdropped Azad Hind Fauj leaflets from his Royal Air Force plane at various points in India. Inevitably, the British government jailed Vijayanand for his anti-imperialist activities. Kaminikant Pattanaik recollects his exploits after he was released from jail in the year 1945.
He felt that there's industry, Odisha should be industrialized. So he went throughout Odisha to every door he has gone with 100, 200 rupees for share money. He collected, and at Chaudwar he established this Odisha textile mill.
He threw himself into the building of modern Orissa with full energy. The Orissa textile mills he built was soon followed by Kalinga Airways and Kalinga Tubes, Asia's largest pipe manufacturing plant. Along came the Kalinga Cup for football, the Kalinga newspaper, and the Kalinga Foundation Trust, which helped students and medical patients in need. Pyari Mohan Mohapatra, a senior administrator, remembers his enterprise.
He knew industry. He was an industrialist, but he had the skills of an industrial worker or engineer.
Yet the call of adventure was always sweet to his ears. On Pandit Nehru's request, he planned a desperate and daring mission to rescue Indonesian freedom fighters from the clutches of Dutch imperialists.
He was a man who staked his life when he flew to Indonesia, where the Dutch were firing on the airfield from both sides. Flew his own plane and got Sultan Jariar and Muhammad Hatta. He brought both of them out of the firing range by flying his plane down and then bringing it straight to Delhi, and took them to meet with Pandit Nehru.
Kashmir was attacked by Pakistan after freedom and partition of India in 1947. Biju Patnaik volunteered his services to the Indian Air Force. He paradropped vital troops near the capital city of Srinagar. Pakistan was forced to retreat from the valley. Alongside these dramatic missions, Biju Patnaik remained a committed family man. His elder son, Prem Patnaik, remembers.
Between politics that he was doing all the time and building industry, they were all very busy. And so what little we saw of him, he was great fun to be with it. We used to go with him to Kashmir, spend summers with him in Kashmir. We were in Puri together, we were in Gopalpuransi together. So the time that he spent with us was, a lot of fun, and we were there with our friends, and he was very kind to all our friends, and he was a very good father in those ways.
Biju Patnaik's thirst for adventure was balanced by his hunger for knowledge. His relationship with books is remembered by his daughter Geeta Mehta, now an internationally famous writer.
You know, the great philosopher Aristotle once said that philosophy was the pursuit of wonder. And I think if I remember anything about my father, it was that he was always in a state of wonder. He was curious about everything. He was curious about every person he met. He was curious about science. I never saw him without a book in his hand. I remember when we were children, he would finish reading his book, then he'd come around to all of us. Have you finished your books? I want to read your book. Here, I'll trade books. So he had that quality about him.
Well, he never had any plans for us. I think what he really wanted to give, what he used to say very clearly was that the most important thing is a good education, because he said that was one thing that you could never take away from anybody. And the other thing he said to all his children was that whatever you do in life, do something that you have a passion for.
Arun Patnaik remembers his grandfather.
There was one day when my grandfather had come home for dinner when I was studying in Delhi. Unfortunately for me, he found out that I had not performed or done terribly well at one of my classes in school. Upon actually finding out the marks that I had gotten for that particular class, my grandfather asked me to come aside to talk to him. He told me how privileged I was to be studying in such a good private school, and that there are millions of children around the world, poor children, that would give anything to be in my shoes. He told me that he would never want again to have to speak to me about not doing well in any of my classes in school.